Cool. Can you see my screen? Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So hi, everyone. I'm Christian. My background is in product design, but for the last year and a half, I've been trying a lot of different things, experimenting to see what I like and what I don't, and how far I can push them outside of like typical, let's say, product design type of discipline. So I first of all started with growing a Discord community, made quite a bit of like social media educational content and designing for AR VR. I started in-person meetups in New York that are still going through kind of a lot of volunteers, even though I'm not there, and created a few like free digital kind of guides and resources when it comes to like designing for AR and VR. But one of the biggest things that I discovered along the way was ability to build stuff with AI. So XR Jobs Board is my main example. And today I wanted to show you exactly how I took it from idea to revenue almost entirely thanks to AI. So XR Jobs Board is essentially a website that curates all sorts of jobs from extended reality industry in one place. So XR, it's like an umbrella term for AI, AR, VR, and whatnot. I'm going to use that term quite a lot. So when I say XR, I mean, virtual reality and whatnot. Before I get into the details, I wanted to share a bit context with you in terms of my philosophy behind building with AI and how I do it. So I've been always passionate about entrepreneurship and building things. That's what kind of got me into design in the first place. But over time, I wanted more. I wanted to actually ship real products by myself. I tried to learn coding many times, but I would always kind of get stuck, lost motivation and whatnot. I did a few HTML, CSS courses, learned a bit of JavaScript just to understand roughly how things work. But I never was able to sit down and write a full product end to end by myself. So for all kind of practical purposes, I would consider myself having zero technical experience. And that's why AI blew my mind, because suddenly building solo felt possible. And my philosophy with building with AI is pretty simple. I'm not here to build something wildly complex that never existed before. I just want to solve real problems that can become sustainable, profitable products that I can build and ship by myself. And to me, AI bridges that gap. It lets me combine my design and product kind of experience and actually launch things. And a small disclaimer to all of that is that I'm not a professional developer, so later I'll be talking about technical things. I might be completely wrong, so take it with a grain of salt. I probably don't use AI very efficiently either, but despite all of that, I was still able to kind of steer AI and build things that I wanted, and I was working. So, and here is my kind of high level approach of how I build with AI. So first of all, I can write any code, but I know just enough about how things work to guide AI properly. And so before I build anything, I spend a lot of time researching what stack, what approach, why this solution over that. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever gotten was this article on Stack Overflow about how do I ask good questions. And that changed everything for me, because good research and good questions are half, or if not the majority of the battle. Because I realized very quickly that AI is not really a magic. It kind of reflects what you feed into it and almost reflects of yourself. If being quite harsh, if you're going to feed it with a lot of shit, it's going to give you shit output. So you need to spend quite a bit of time on steering it in the right direction and providing a good content. Second of all, I never stick to just one tool. I pretty much use all of them at the same time, and I would just as put in the same input into all sorts of different models and all sorts of different providers to get kind of different angles, catch different gaps, and generally help sense check. It's almost asking multiple people for advice. You rarely just listen to one person. You usually get different inputs from different people. I don't think I'm also very good at prompting, and actually rarely looked at any in-depth resources, but somehow, despite of that, I still manage to do everything what I want. And my main strategy it was to is to have like very specific step-by-step plan of what I want to do. And this plan comes from research and knowing what solution I want to implement. So then I focus on working block by block, executing each step, then kind of trying to do, I guess, everything in like a one shot or anything like that. So, having this a bit of kind of high level context out of the way, let's dive into actually how I was using it to build XR Jobs Board. So in early 2024, I came across Cursor. I used it to rebuild my personal website, and it blew my mind because previously I would use Webflow and try to use other no coding tools, and I would spend a lot of time trying to learn them, and they were always kind of limiting and very expensive. But I knew that some of the stuff that I wanted to do were very simple with code, but I just was never able to, to write it. But with, coming across Cursor, suddenly I was able to do kind of all of that. So since then, I was just kind of looking for excuses of how to use AI more. So at the same time, I was experimenting with a lot of kind of XR side initiatives. So I was doing kind of meetups, guides, social media. And in all those conversations, one question kept popping up was, where do I find XR jobs? So there were many job boards for all sorts of niche jobs and industries, but there was nothing for XR. And so I thought this might be a perfect opportunity for me to merge having some of this industry knowledge and insight of having this problem that I could solve, plus having this need to build more stuff and use AI more. And the reason behind of this, why I've decided to focus on this project, is that a job board is not really rocket science. It's very well defined space, a very well defined problem, and a kind of value proposition. But still, it has enough technical moving parts and complexity that it's a perfect sandbox project to learn, test, and perhaps even monetize. There's a bit of scraping, there is social media growth, databases, monetization, simple filters, advanced filters. So all those kind of things felt to me perfect for someone who doesn't have technical background, but just want to have a clear goal of what to achieve. But before I started building anything really, I decided to focus on validating the idea and creating MVP. So I thought, what is the most important feature and what is XR Jobs Board at the core? And I settled on ability to send emails, so essentially a newsletter. And the reason behind all this is that my value prop, like in my head, my idea was that, you have all sorts of those websites with jobs, but you have to go to all of, like, you have to visit multiple them every day to see if there's anything new there. I decided to position is that all new jobs in your inbox. You don't have to go on a website every day. They were supposed to have some sort of like advanced notification systems. They would be getting like a daily, weekly, and whatnot notifications about new jobs. And second of all, emails are much more valuable than the page views. I knew it's going to take me a bit more time to build a platform, even in simple form, and populate it with the content and then drive traffic. But I knew that I could start providing value through newsletter and start gathering audience that way. So essentially, my initial version of the product was literally just a waitlist page. That was also a first time for me hooking everything up, finding a third party kind of library to send out emails, make sure that the sign up flow works. It has proper confirmation flow, figuring out how emails are sent out in bulk and are not landing in spam. So that was already big step for me as someone who never experienced with anything like that. Then I designed a mock-up of the platform in Figma, so it was just a static design, and recorded a demo video to validate the idea and see if anyone is interested. So I shared it across all sorts of different social media, and it got a lot of traction on LinkedIn. In 48 hours, it got over 400 signups, 120 survey responses, and 1,500 page views, and a lot of responses from the community. So that moment was extremely motivating and also helped me to build a bit of momentum and small hype. So having this, I guess, idea validated to some extent, I decided, okay, I can spend a bit more time now building the actual thing. Job boards are quite simple on the surface, but can be very easily overcomplicated. So I decided I need to stay very disciplined, especially as someone who is very new to coding. I needed to be realistic about what I could handle. So that's why I ran a short survey. I just wanted a real data both from potential business clients and job seekers in terms of what is the most important for them. I booked a few moderated interviews, and at the end of this kind of process, I had around 200 different responses. I had also hours of calls, and it would take me way too long time to kind of analyze everything by myself. So what I decided to do is like to feed all of this into AI to help me spot patterns that otherwise I would miss on my own. And this process actually really paid off because I quickly realized that what people really cared about was very, very different to my initial idea and my initial approach to the platform. So from now on, I decided, okay, I'm going to really scrap everything what I had in mind at the beginning. I'm just going to really focus on what I'm getting from input from my potential users. I then spent a bit of time researching the tech stack, and I eventually settled on Next.js for a few reasons. So first of all, it has massive documentation and a lot of very beginner-friendly tutorials on YouTube, including some of ones that build actually full job boards. So technically, I could just focus follow some YouTube videos to build the whole thing. AI coding tools seems to be also very well trained on Next.js patterns and documentation, and Vercel made deploying super simple. I didn't want to waste time setting up hosting or fiddling anything with anything like that, because I didn't even know if this project is going to be alive in 2 weeks. So I just wanted to, my goal was to ship something very fast and then improve in very small loops. So the first version of XR Jobs world was very bare bones. If you're going to simplify it to the most, the core thing, it was like, okay, here's the, Excel spreadsheet. Let's imagine like the database with the data. And here is the UI, and I want you to that UI populate with the data. It didn't even have any pages with the data about the jobs. Essentially, user was clicking on each job, and it was just taking them outside of the platform straight to the job itself. To many, that might sound very trivial, but for me, databases and backends were completely foreign. Like it was a dark magic. I couldn't completely cope of how those things connect to each other and are possible. So keeping this scope very tiny was perfect because it forced me to learn how those things work and actually understand, what is the setup of my database, how the data is displayed, and then how I can scale it further without drowning into a complexity. But it also was very simple to AI to kind of debug it and build it because I wasn't focusing on anything very advanced. At first, when I was doing that, I followed a few kind of different tutorials, but when they started adding extra libraries and complex kind of authentication setups, I switched fully to AI help. I would essentially just prompt it exactly what I needed, and then block by block, I was debugging and tweaking until it actually worked. A couple days later, I had the basic version live. So my next step, okay, what is my next step? So my next steps was creating a dynamic job details page. So each job had its own URL. And the reason behind all this is that I knew that SEO is extremely important, and I wanted to start kind of building positioning in Google and organic growth and whatnot. So I thought it's going to be a good next step to have like a lot of different pages. So that meant learning routing in Next.js, another tiny manageable skill. And then I focused on filters. Essentially, at the beginning, it was just kind of categories. And then after that, I built something a bit more complex, so user could choose multiple filters at the same time and apply. And that was my approach the whole way. One small feature at a time, keep it clear, keep it simple, ship it, learn how it works by myself whilst I'm, working with AI, and then repeat. And staying small made it way easier to use AI as well, because I wasn't overwhelming it with huge vague requests. I was just giving it very focused tasks and learning just enough to connect the dots myself. So at this point, the platform was live. It could display the jobs, link out, capture emails, but there was still one big problem for me, which was the content. So for the first few weeks, I was adding every single job to the database completely manually. I would just go on a website, copy the important data, go to this to the database, and then kind of copy and paste, copy and paste. It was extremely time consuming and repetitive. So my next goal was to, okay, how can I automate it, at least to some extent? So I started from mapping out my own steps. So what I do as a human in order to go through this process. So essentially, I search for jobs. Um, I look for jobs which are fitting into are high quality. They're fitting into my industry. I capture the info from a listing, add that info to the database, and I make it live on the site. It's very simple in theory, but super boring when you do it by hand. And when I was working through some sort of kind of tutorials that I did earlier, I came across a script that was bulk uploading dummy data into the database. And initially, when I ran it, at the time, it blew my mind because it just worked like magic. I couldn't believe that something like this exists. So I thought it's going to, I can try recreate something for this specific purpose, but instead of dummy data, I'm just going to be pasting the actual data. But the problem was is that I had no idea how to write in Node, and to be honest, I didn't really want to spend time kind of learning, so I decided to do it completely with AI. I would just tell it what I wanted. It would spit out the code, and then I would troubleshoot errors until it worked. So here on the left-hand side, you can see more or less the prompt that I've used. And then on the right-hand side, it was the code that actually I'm using to bulk upload all my jobs. And it ended up being only like 40 lines of code, and it was working. So that alone cut me hours of work, and it was pretty fascinating. So at that point, I got pretty ambitious. I thought, okay, if I can upload things to the internet, can I download the internet? And so I started looking into web scraping, and I quickly realized that it's very, very hard. It's not easy to download internet. At least it's not for me. I have a few failed attempts at scraping the internet. I tried with Google Jobs and other big platforms, and it got some like interesting results. It would actually spit out the data, and it was more or less accurate, but it still wasn't. The quality still wasn't good enough to what I wanted to have on my platform. So I thought, okay, scraping the whole thing is not going to work. So what is the most simplest version of that? I realized that instead of scraping whole platforms, I could just scrape specific jobs URLs. And this is where things got really interesting, because many job listings don't label things nicely. For example, the location might be buried in a paragraph instead of in a very nice location field somewhere on a website. So I connected AI to my scraping script, and essentially the whole thing worked in the following way. So I ran a script, I passed URLs with specific jobs. Puppeteer, which is the library for web scraping, extracts the content to like this very raw, simple format, and then AI reads that content and understands it, and then maps it out to my database schema. So essentially, AI works the same way as I do as a human, which is reading the page, reading the content, and try to populate the content within the database. So even if the word, let's say New York, only appears deep in the description, it still fills the location field correctly. So this took quite a bit of tweaking, lots of trials and errors, but eventually I started getting clean and consistent output. So here on the left, you can see my example of my schema and actually parsed content. And on the right, this is, it just goes straight into the database. And the most thing that I personally love about this whole process is that I built this entire pipeline completely with Windsurf and Cloud API. I didn't do almost anything kind of by myself. yeah, I guess to some extent, depending on how you see that. So yeah, for someone who can write code from scratch, seeing this loop work and from scraping to structured database was pretty wild. So the platform was live, semi-automated. Kind of what's next? I quickly realized that building the product and automating it is actually the easiest part of building a product. There is so much more creating successful product than that. And I feel like many people gets lost into the rabbit hole of building, thinking that shipping the next feature is going to, make the bang and that's going to change everything, but it's actually quite the opposite. So the most work of making XR Jobs Board semi-successful was all this kind of unsexy stuff. So optimizing the platform SEO, making sure like the pages and job descriptions, category pages are optimized, Google picks them up and whatnot, figuring out distribution. So initially, it heavily relied on my kind of personal brand. So writing regular updates, marketing content on socials to kind of keep driving new traffic or regular traffic, trying different distribution channels and socials, reaching out to other projects for partnerships, Discord servers, friends, and whatnot. Also figure out the monetization. It's one thing for people to visit your website, and it's completely another for them to pull out the credit card. Interestingly enough, most of my sales actually got closed by me reaching out to hiring managers and founders directly. Despite them knowing about the project and visiting the website and being interested, they just really needed this extra nudge. And from going through this whole entire process of designing, building, and then trying to grow has been particularly very fascinating, particularly from a design perspective, because as a designer working on a lot of different startups, different sizes, and spinning new products in others people companies, I always thought that design is this magical thing that is going to solve everything. If something is not working, you just need a bit more sprinkles of design. But working on my own product quickly made me realize that design very often moved in my, for me in this process on like third or even fourth priority, because there are so many other things that needs to be done or improved that directly influences the KPI. So that was very interesting and I would say very humbling experience as a designer. Last but not least, one thing that I haven't talked about yet is kind of building in public. So for those not familiar, building in public basically means just sharing regular updates about what you are working on. So wins, failures, lessons, and not just the good stuff, but also all those kind of the messy bits. Sometimes even also writing a bit more about your personal stuff, because people connect with people. And I wanted to talk about this because, coming across the concept of building in a public has been very huge for me and for this project. I would spend years dreading social media before, overthinking my personal brand, trying to write a perfect bio, worrying about what to post. But with this project, I wanted to do something completely else. So just kind of go in a completely opposite direction. So instead of polishing every word and over strategizing, I would just share everything that came to my mind. So a rough idea, a very scrappy landing page, early waitlist signups link, like even without any designs, it's just a link to the waitlist, sneak peeks of the Figma mockups of some explorations, little wins, mistakes, and whatnot. And it actually worked. People gave me feedback, they cheered me on, they shared it with friends, and that's how I actually got my first 400 signups before the platform even existed, by showing up consistently for a few weeks and letting people follow the journey and be kind of part of it. And what worked for me in this process was, first of all, being honest. So I didn't pretend that XR Jobs Board is this very polished product or startup that is going to exist forever and whatnot. I was just like, hey, this is something I came across. I'm trying to figure it out in my own time on top of family, friends, full-time work and whatnot. And it turns out a lot of people related to it, and actually they enjoyed it because they appreciated more that I'm putting my own personal time into it and still providing some sort of value. Um, Second of all is showing rough drafts. So instead of waiting until something was perfect or trying to overthink each post, I would just share everything as I was going. And funny enough, some of my most popular posts were the quick ones that I almost didn't post at all because I thought, it just doesn't make sense. And the third one is stop trying to build an audience. And that might sound a bit counterintuitive, but when you go to a house party, you don't really stand in the middle of the room bragging about your CV. You mingle, you talk to people, you connect, you see what's up. And I realized that social media is kind of the same. It's for making friends. So if you post stuff that actually sounds like you, and things that you personally like enjoy, other people will connect with, because we are surrounded by so much slop, either by over strategized posts, loads of AI. So people are seeking this authenticity in other people and vulnerability to some extent. And that kind of brings me also what didn't work. There were moments when things got messy and I would just, feel stuck and I would disappear. And during those moments, I would lose kind of all the momentum. Also, I quickly realized that posting this kind of very flashy announcements and look at me posts didn't really get as much attention as well. Actually, the posts and content that made the most impact were the ones where I didn't know what to do and just like posted something that I tried scraping and just didn't work. And people were kind enough to reach out and give me tips, share the knowledge. Even some of them jump on calls with me and spend their time because uh, they just emphasized with it. So by the time I launched, I wasn't starting from zero. There was already a small community of people who cared about what I'm doing and about the project itself. Some even offered help to source jobs, spread the word, trying to contribute, even write some code, because they just watched the story unfold and wanted it to succeed. XR Jobs Board also connected me with people I'd never meet otherwise, other builders, collaborators, even a few jobs leads of myself, such as also this, opportunity here that I'm able to talk to you. I randomly wrote to Xinran a few weeks ago, and he was, we had a chat. I told him about the project and he really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed what he's doing. All because I decided to build, I guess, loudly, not quietly. But more for me, it was a way to archive something that I'm doing. I just wanted to have a memory of me, going through this kind of process. So if you're thinking about starting something, I would say don't hide it. Even if it's tiny, if it's messy, just share it, because you never know who might come across it, and people, might just reach out because they find it inspiring and interesting. Um, so I talked a lot of different stuff here, and I think all of them are quite important on different levels. But I guess one thing that I would, if you had to remember one thing from all of this, is that I truly believe that we live in very incredible times, that you don't have to be a developer to build and launch products anymore, but you just still need to have enough kind of grit and passion to figure out how things work, to steer the AI in the right direction. So if there's anything that you are kind of brainstorming or thinking about, just give it a go and see where it's going to take you, because I think it's definitely going to be beneficial. I don't think you're going to lose anything out of it. And with that, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And yeah, the last thing is that I personally met a lot of people along the way, as I mentioned, who helped me a lot. And I really enjoy to talking other people as well. So if anyone wants to kind of reach out and have a chat or get any feedback or have more questions, feel free to either add me on LinkedIn or on X. And yeah, that's all.